On the very day of my wedding, I discovered our future home wasn't in our names at all. I quietly withdrew my down payment and canceled the reception. When it was time for the ceremony, I was a no-show. My fiancé's family called me in a fury 7 times. I put the phone on speaker and said a single sentence that silenced the entire hall. There are some stories that if someone else told them to me, I might have laughed and said, "Who would be that stupid in real life?" Imagine, a couple for 3 years, about to be married, already introduced to both families. The engagement photos were done. The invitations were sent. The reception was booked. The date was chosen, and we had even daydreamed about whether we'd have a boy or a girl. How could everything fall apart in just a few hours? But when it happened to me, I finally understood. People don't become fools because they lack intelligence. They become fools because they trust too much. My name is Leah, and I was 28 years old. I met Paul when our companies had a joint project. Paul wasn't the type to turn heads with his looks, nor was he a smooth talker. He was the kind of man who seemed incredibly kind, calm, and easy to trust. In our 3 years together, he never once raised his voice at me. Every morning, he'd wait for me so we could commute to work together. If it rained, he'd be waiting outside my office with an umbrella. He never forgot a gift for any occasion. Once, when I had a high fever, he took leave from work just to stay by my side, changing the cool cloth on my forehead all night. My mom once looked at Paul and told me, "Honey, good men are rare these days, he's a keeper." Even my dad, who was so stern he had chased away 3 of my ex-boyfriends just because he didn't like their faces, simply nodded quietly in approval. I thought I was the luckiest person alive, until 3 months before our wedding. That day, we signed the contract for a condominium unit. It was located in a new urban development in East Austin, an 860-square-foot 2-bedroom unit with a balcony that overlooked a man-made lake. I fell in love with it at first sight. Paul ruffled my hair and smiled. "Wherever my wife is happy, that's where we'll be. From now on, you're the boss of everything in our home." I smiled shyly. I put down $50,000 from my 6 years of savings, while Paul contributed $1,000. The rest would be covered by a mortgage from the bank. I remember that day vividly. As the escrow officer handed over the documents for us to sign, Paul's older sister, Diana, suddenly spoke up. She placed her hand on the table and said in a calm voice, "This house will be in my name." I thought I had misheard. I turned to Paul. "What did you say?" Paul smiled naturally. "Diana will just be the registered owner for now." "The registered owner? For what?" I looked at him, confused. Diana crossed her arms and smiled. "You don't get it yet? It's a family rule." I was stunned. "What rule?" "Major assets like a house must be in a family member's name to ensure it's protected in case the couple has problems in the future." I looked at Diana, then back at Paul. I waited for him to say his sister was joking, but he said nothing. He just held my hand. "Don't overthink it, Leah. It's just a formality. The deed will be transferred to us once the mortgage is paid off." "Why does it need to be transferred? It's our house. Why can't it be in our names from the start?" Paul's smile vanished. "Leah, don't be so calculating." I remember the hurt I felt then. But Paul hugged me and said, "We've been together for 3 years. Don't you trust me?" One simple question. One sentence that silenced me. It was true. It had been 3 years. I trusted him. I trusted him without another question. Now, thinking back, if I had only been stronger then, if I had just walked away, maybe none of this would have happened on my wedding day. The morning of my wedding, I woke up at 4:30 a.m. The hotel where the reception was to be held was in the heart of the city. Makeup, putting on the wedding gown, greeting guests, taking photos, everything was going according to plan. Paul's mother, Cora, had a smile that stretched from ear to ear. She kept looking at me and saying, "You're so lucky, Leah, to be marrying into our family." Once, twice, 3 times. By nearly 9 in the morning, it was the 7th time I had heard that line. I looked at myself in the mirror. The wedding gown, which cost nearly $2,500, hugged my body perfectly. My hair was in an elegant updo, and I was wearing the set of pearls Paul had picked out. I was so beautiful that for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. My phone vibrated. It was Paul. "My love," he said. "I'm just going to pick up our relatives from Houston. Just wait for me at the hotel, okay? And don't go running around." I laughed. "I'm not a child. My family has a surprise for you, at the new house." I froze. I don't know why, but the issue of the condo being in Diana's name suddenly flashed in my mind. A strange chill crept up my spine, unsettling and persistent. I stayed quiet for a few seconds, then suddenly grabbed the key to the condo. I remembered Paul giving it to me last week, smiling. No peeking, okay? It's a surprise for later. I looked at the key in my hand. A strange idea entered my mind. Just a peek. Just for a minute. That's what I told myself. I didn't know that moments later, when I opened the door to that condo, the first thing to greet me wouldn't be celebratory red balloons or festive decorations. It would be a pair of black women's heels, placed neatly by the shoe rack. An old pair of shoes. Shoes that were clearly not mine. My hands started to go cold, and in that moment, I had a powerful premonition. This wedding was probably not going to happen. I opened the door and stepped inside, my hands still on the doorknob, my body frozen in place. At first, I tried to calm myself. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe the shoes belonged to the cleaning lady, a delivery person, or someone who helped decorate. But people, especially women, have a sixth sense. There are things the eyes have not yet seen, the ears have not yet heard, but the heart already knows. I took a few more steps. The living room was beautifully arranged. There were red love letters taped to the wall. On the coffee table, a vase held fresh flowers. The sofa was still partially covered in plastic. Everything looked just like the dream home I had envisioned for a newly married couple. The only problem was, it didn't feel like my home. On a shelf next to the TV was a small picture frame. It caught my eye immediately. It was a photo of Paul and Diana. I stopped. In the picture, Paul was smiling happily while anyone else looking at it would just say they were very close siblings. But I don't know why. As I stared at that photo, a chill ran through my entire being. Because I was certain I had never seen that picture before. I slowly entered the master bedroom. When I opened the door, my knees went weak. On top of the vanity table, lined up neatly, were various kinds of makeup, perfume, lotion, lipstick, a comb, and a curling iron that was still plugged in. I stared at those items. Not a single one of them was mine. I didn't use that brand of lipstick. I didn't wear that perfume. I stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then I opened the closet. On the left were Paul's suits. On the right were women's clothes, a lot of them. There were nightgowns, blouses, and casual wear for lounging at home. I froze. I pulled open a drawer below. Neatly folded were several sets of underwear. I recognized the brand. It was very expensive. One set cost upwards of $150. I had looked at it online once but never bought it, feeling it was too much to spend. And now, here it was. Inside the house I had saved up for. My hands started to tremble. I took 2 steps back and sat on the edge of the bed. My mind was blank. I wanted to call Paul immediately. I wanted to question him, to ask him what on earth was going on, but I don't know why I didn't. In that moment, I was scared. I was scared of his answer. Scared that my suspicions were correct. I sat for a while longer before getting up and touring the rest of the house. The second bedroom had been set up as a child's room. There were cartoon characters on the walls and several stuffed toys on the bed. I stopped short. I remembered clearly. Paul and I had never discussed this. We weren't even married yet. We hadn't even talked about having children. So why did this room look like it had been prepared long ago? An inexplicable feeling began to build inside me. I opened the door to the study. This time, I truly couldn't take it anymore. On the bookshelf sat Paul's diploma. Next to it, a certificate with Diana's name. And next to that, a box of medication for Diana's high blood pressure. I had seen her take it at their house before. I stared at the medicine box for a long time. Then, a tiny, bitter smile formed on my face. In that instant, I understood. I understood everything. This wasn't my new home. This was their home. The home of Paul and his family. And I was just the one who paid for it. I walked out to the living room as if in a daze. As I passed a cabinet near the balcony, I noticed a drawer was slightly ajar. I stopped. I don't know why, but I pulled it open. In the next second, my entire body went cold. Inside was a red folder. The deed to the house. I stared at it for a long time, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I told myself, it's okay. It might just be a photocopy. Maybe it's temporary papers. I opened it. The words were crystal clear. Owner's name, Diana Davis. Only Diana, not Paul's name, not my name. I stared at those words until my vision blurred. I remembered every little detail. For the past 3 months, whenever I suggested we go shopping for furniture, Paul would always smile and say, Diana's got it covered. Whenever I asked about the bank loan documents, he would change the subject. Whenever Diana looked at me, she would smile a strange smile. Back then, I didn't understand. Now, I did. It was the smile of a victor. And I was the fool who had been played for 3 months. My phone vibrated. Paul's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering. His voice was as gentle as ever. "My love, where are you? The makeup artist is looking for you." I remained silent. "Leah, are you there? Where are you?" I looked around the room at the nightgown hanging in the closet, at the medicine box on the shelf, at the property deed in my hand. Then I asked softly, "Paul, is there something you want to tell me?" The other end of the line went silent for a second. Just 1 second, but it was enough. Because sometimes, you don't need to hear the answer. The silence is enough to understand everything. Paul's voice came back, still calm, the kind of gentle, reassuring tone that would make you think he was a good person. But in that moment, I felt a chill. Not from the strong air conditioning in the unit, but from a coldness that crept from my chest down to my stomach, as if someone had shoved a handful of ice inside me. Paul had paused for a moment, then he laughed. "What's with you?" "That's a weird question." I looked down at the deed in my hand. I didn't say a word. Paul continued, "Leah, where are you? Tell me." I could hear the sound of traffic in the background, the murmur of people. He was probably on his way to pick up his relatives. I asked softly, "Our house is beautiful, isn't it?" The line went silent again. Longer this time, about 3 seconds. 3 seconds is short, but in that situation, it felt like 3 years. "You've been to the unit?" "Yes. You told me not to come yet. Why not?" "It's not that. I mean, it's not finished yet." I laughed. My laugh sounded strange, even to me. "Leah, what's wrong?" "I have a question for you." "Go on, tell me." "Whose makeup is on the vanity table?" I clearly heard him take a deep breath on the other end. "Ah, that's Diana's." "And the clothes in the closet? The underwear?" Paul didn't answer. I looked out at the balcony. It was a beautiful day. The sun was hitting the lake in the distance. Kids were riding bikes below. A perfect day. A day when, in just a few hours, I was supposed to be wearing a wedding gown and walking down the aisle. But here I was, standing and asking the man I was about to marry why there was another woman's underwear in the house I had saved up for. It was laughable. It took a long time before Paul spoke. "Leah, don't misinterpret things." "What is there to misinterpret?" "Diana just separated from her husband. She's not emotionally stable, so she's staying here for a while." "For a while?" "Oh, how long? A month? 2 months? A year?" Paul started to get irritated. "Why are you asking so many questions? Don't I have the right to ask?" "Leah," Paul's tone dropped. "It's our wedding day. Can you please not cause trouble?" I bit my lip. In the past, just hearing that tone from him would have made me give in immediately. I would have blamed myself for being paranoid, thinking maybe he was just tired. I would have been the first to back down. For 3 years, it was always like that. Whenever we fought, I was always the first to apologize, because Paul was clever. He didn't shout, he didn't throw things, he didn't curse. He would just go silent and cold until my own conscience got the better of me. But now, I didn't know why. I didn't want to hold back anymore. I sat on the sofa, my voice surprisingly calm. "Paul." "What?" "I've seen the deed." The other end of the line went completely silent. No breathing, no traffic noise, nothing. A terrifying silence. Then Paul suddenly spoke, quickly. "Let me explain." "I'm listening." "It's not what you think." "Then what am I thinking?" "Diana is just the registered owner as a formality." "A formality? Just her name? Alone?" I repeated, my voice still calm. The calmer I was, the more frantic Paul became. "You have to believe me, Leah. I've believed you for 3 years, Paul." 3 years, I replied. I stared into the distance. I put down $50,000. I worked until 10 p.m. I ate instant noodles for a whole month just to save for this house. I trusted you. Even when Diana said the house would be in her name, I didn't walk away. How much longer do I need to believe you? A loud sigh came from the other end. "Leah. The guests are all arriving soon. So what? Can we please talk about this tonight?" "No." "Leah." For the first time, Paul yelled at me. I was stunned. 3 years. That was the first time. "What are you doing? It's our wedding day. Everyone knows. The invitations have been sent. The relatives are here. Do you want to make a scene?" I laughed. This time, a tear fell. I didn't know if I was crying from the pain or the disappointment. Am I the one making a scene? Did I put your sister's name on the deed to the house? Did I move your sister's things into our house? Did I lie to you for 3 months? Paul didn't answer. I heard his heavy breathing. After a few moments, his voice returned to its gentle tone. Leah, listen to me. After the wedding, I'll explain everything. I'll give you whatever you want. Just for now. Please don't embarrass me. I looked up at the ceiling. So that's what it was. In the end, it was still about his pride. Until the very last moment, he was afraid of being embarrassed. Not afraid of losing me. Not afraid of hurting me. But afraid of being embarrassed. I slowly stood up, took one last look around the entire room, and grabbed the key before walking out the door. Leah, where are you going? I pulled the door shut. Leah, I said softly, I'm going back to the hotel. Paul's voice immediately lightened. That's right. Okay, come back. Then we'll talk. I stood in front of the elevator. The numbers began to descend from the top floor. 12, 11, 10. I looked at my reflection in the elevator door. My makeup was perfect, my lips red, my hair in a neat updo. I looked like a bride about to be married. But my eyes were the eyes of someone who had just woken up from a dream. I brought the phone to my ear and said very quietly, I'm coming back to get what's mine. After that, I hung up, and in the moment the elevator doors opened, a plan formed in my mind that even I hadn't expected. I stepped out of the elevator with a strange clarity of mind. They say that when you're cheated on, the pain is so immense you can't even stand. You'll cry, you'll scream, you'll confront them to get to the truth. I thought I would be like that too. But I realized that when the pain reaches its peak, the tears dry up on their own. The only feeling left is a chill. A coldness that spread through my entire body and brought clarity to my mind. As I walked, I checked my phone. 10 missed calls from Paul. Text messages flooded the screen. Leah, don't overthink things. Leah, let me explain. Just come back to the hotel for now. Please don't embarrass me today. The last message was sent just a few seconds ago. Leah, be good. I stared at those 2 words. Be good. For a long time. For 3 years, that was always Paul's way with me. Whenever I was sad, he'd say, be good now. Whenever I wanted to argue, he'd say, don't be so childish. Whenever I was at a disadvantage, he'd put his arm around me and say, be good. Just let it go. Back then, I thought it was affection. Now, I understood. It wasn't affection. It was control. Because someone who truly loves you wouldn't always make you the one to suffer. I stood outside the hotel, watching people pass by, and called someone. The moment the other line connected, she yelled, What is it, Bridezilla? What do you need from me at a time like this? Aren't you supposed to be getting ready for the wedding? It was Becca, my best friend since college. I took a deep breath. Where are you? Becca went silent for a few seconds. Leah, are you crying? No. Tell me the truth. I looked up at the sky. Come to my wedding hotel. What happened? I need your help. 20 minutes later, Becca arrived in front of the hotel. The moment she saw me, she ran over. My God, why are you so pale? She said, holding my hands. What happened? I didn't answer right away. I just handed her my phone, showing her the photo of the deed, the pictures of Diana's things, and the nursery. I watched her expression change from curiosity to confusion, and finally to rage. What is this? The new house. What new house? My house, I laughed. Oh, wait, no, Paul's sister's house. Becca stared at me for a few seconds, then cursed loudly. That bastard. A few passers-by looked at her, but she didn't care. I knew it. You knew what? I never liked that guy. I looked at her. Why didn't you say so before? I did, didn't I? You were just too in love to listen. She pulled me to sit on a bench. Leah, do you remember your birthday last year? Diana made you wash all the dishes by yourself in the kitchen. I froze. I remembered. It was my birthday, but there were so many guests. Cora had said, Leah, help me out for a bit. I washed dishes for almost 2 hours. By the time I came out to eat cake, the candles had almost burned out. All Paul said then was, We're practically family anyway. What are you getting so worked up about? Becca continued. And then when your mom was hospitalized and you needed money, Paul said he was tight on cash. But a week later, he bought Diana a new phone. I looked up at her, my fists clenching. I remembered everything. But back then I always made excuses for him because I loved him. It's strange when you're in love. You see all the red flags, but you lie to yourself and say it's okay. Becca looked at me. Leah. I fell silent. Just then, My phone vibrated. It was Paul's mom. The screen read, "Cora calling." Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't answer. Then it vibrated again. This time it was Diana. I answered. Before I could speak, Diana's voice echoed through the phone. "Leah, where are you?" I laughed softly. "Why, Diana?" "What do you mean, why? It's your wedding day. You know that, right? Why are you running around?" "Am I running around?" "Aren't you? What is wrong with you? You're a grown woman. Stop acting like a child. The whole family is looking for you." I just stood there. "Diana? What?" "The condo unit is beautiful." The line went silent. "What are you talking about? I don't understand you." "Let's not pretend anymore, Diana. I only have one question for you." I looked out at the street. "How long were you planning to live in that house?" Diana went silent. After a few seconds, she suddenly laughed. For the first time, I heard that kind of laugh from her. It wasn't fake or formal, but full of arrogance. "Now that you know, I won't hide it anymore." My heart stopped. "Leah, a woman who gets married needs to know how to get along with her in-laws. Once you marry into our family, you'll be one of us. It doesn't matter whose name the house is under. It's all the same. I'm Paul's sister. Do you think I would hurt you?" I tightened my grip on the phone. "And what if I hadn't found out today? Whether you found out or not, would anything change? After the wedding, you'd still be living with our family. Leah, don't be so calculating. Besides, you're almost 30. If you break up with Paul, do you really think you'll find someone better than him?" I looked up, my lips trembling. In that moment, an idea suddenly entered my mind that horrified even me. I looked at Becca and slowly stood up. "Come with me," Becca asked, puzzled. "Where?" I looked toward the hotel's reception hall, to get back what's mine. And this time, I had no intention of crying. I stared at the entrance to the hotel's grand ballroom. Becca, beside me, looked at me as if I were a stranger. She probably never expected a quiet friend like me to have such a look in her eyes. Even I felt, in that moment, that I had changed. They say a woman in love is blind, but when she awakens to the truth, she can be terrifying. I used to think that was just melodrama, but only then did I understand. It's not that they become terrifying because they want revenge. They become terrifying because when a heart is shattered, the mind awakens. Becca grabbed my arm. "Leah, what are you going to do?" I looked at her and took a deep breath. "I'm just getting back what's mine. But don't do anything crazy." "I won't." I glanced down at my phone. 23 missed calls. 17 from Paul, 5 from Cora, 1 from Diana. My texts were full. "Leah, answer the phone. Where are you? Everyone is looking for you. Leah, please don't embarrass me." Embarrassment. Always embarrassment. I laughed softly. Since that morning, not a single person had asked if I was okay. No one asked if I was hurting. No one asked if I was scared and alone. Their only question was where I was, so they could drag me back to continue playing the role of the bride. Becca pulled me into the elevator. "Are you really going straight up there? What if Paul's family is there?" Even better. The elevator doors opened. The second floor of the hotel was the wedding venue. As soon as I stepped out, I heard the MC's voice from inside the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please bear with us for a few moments. Our lovely bride is currently getting ready." I froze. Getting ready. I turned to Becca. She looked back at me. We were both silent for a few seconds, then her eyes widened. "No way." I walked quickly toward the ballroom doors. As I got closer, my heart beat faster. When I reached the entrance, I saw a hotel staff member hunched over, talking on the phone. When he looked up and saw me, he turned pale. "Ma'am." "Ma'am Leah. Hi, ma'am. Are you okay?" I smiled. Why wouldn't I be? The staff member looked at me, then glanced inside the ballroom. He had a strange look in his eyes. I understood immediately. "What's going on in there?" He hesitated. "Well, ma'am, tell me the truth." The groom's family said. "You suddenly had a stomachache and were resting." I stopped. And then they said to just continue with the program. I felt my head spin. Continue? How can they continue? The staff member looked down. "I don't know, ma'am." I looked at the large doors and slowly pushed one open. The moment it swung open, wedding music filled the air. The hall was full. Almost 30 tables were occupied. Relatives from both sides were laughing. Some were eating fruit, some were taking pictures, some were even standing to make toasts, as if nothing was wrong. I looked at the stage, and in the next second, my entire body went rigid. Standing there was Paul, still in his black suit, wearing the same smile. But the person next to him was not me. It was a woman in a white wedding gown, her face half covered by a veil. I stared, stunned. Becca, beside me, muttered a curse. Son of a bitch. I could hear every beat of my heart, loud and fast. I couldn't understand what was happening. I thought I was seeing things. But no, it was real. Paul had actually found another woman to take my place. In that moment, I no longer felt pain. It was strange. When you're stabbed deep, you don't feel the pain right away, just a blank numbness. The MC on stage was cheerful. And now, let us invite our bride and groom for their exchange of rings. Just then, a voice rang out from the back. Leah? I turned. It was my friend, Tina. She looked at me, then at the stage, her eyes widening. What the hell? Her voice wasn't quiet. The tables near the door immediately turned, and soon, others followed. 1, 2, 10. A wave of whispers swept through the hall. Paul saw me from the stage. The smile on his face instantly froze. He looked like he'd been turned to stone. The woman in the wedding gown beside him also turned. I saw her hands trembling. Cora, sitting at the main table, suddenly stood up. Leah! Her voice almost cracked. I looked at her, then at Paul, and the woman in the wedding gown. All the noise in the hall seemed to fade away. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat. And then, one step at a time, I walked in. Slowly. The sound of my heels echoed on the floor. Click, clack, click. The entire hall fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. All eyes were on me. Paul turned pale. Leah. I didn't answer. I continued walking up to the stage until I was standing right in front of him. He swallowed hard. Let me explain. I looked at the woman in the wedding gown beside him and slowly lifted her veil. The moment I saw the face beneath it, the entire hall, including me, was speechless. I lifted the veil. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The feeling was surreal, as if time had suddenly stopped. I stared at the face in front of me for a few seconds, stunned myself. It wasn't Diana. It wasn't even someone I recognized. It was a very young woman, probably only in her early 20s. Her face was deathly pale, her eyes red as if she had been crying for a while. The makeup couldn't hide the fear on her face. I looked at her, and she looked at me. Then she suddenly bowed her head. Ma'am. Ma'am, please don't get the wrong idea. Her voice trembled, on the verge of tears. My brow furrowed. Paul immediately stepped between us. Leah, let me explain. Explain? I looked at him. You're going to explain that you found another woman to replace me as the bride? Whispers erupted from the tables below. She was replaced? My God, what is wrong with this family? Cora turned pale and rushed onto the stage. Leah, honey, just calm down. I turned to her. You're telling me to calm down? It's not what you think. Then what is it? Cora panicked. Because. Suddenly, Diana stood up from her table. She was wearing a striking red dress, holding a handbag, and she quickly ascended the stage. All right, I'll be the one to say it. She pulled the young woman behind her and faced me. Leah, you're going too far. I laughed. I'm the one going too far? Yes. You left in the middle of your own wedding. Our whole family was looking for you. We couldn't just keep the guests waiting forever, so we found a substitute. Diana lifted her chin. It was just to get through the ceremony. Just for show. I stared at her for a few seconds. My wedding had just become a show. You're being so childish, Diana said, crossing her arms. There was that line again. Childish. For 3 years, whenever I disagreed with them, they called me childish. I wanted to know about the deed to the house. I was childish. I didn't want to let things go. I was childish. I didn't want to be taken advantage of. I was childish. So in their eyes, as long as I wasn't completely obedient, I was childish. I looked at the woman behind Diana. She was looking down. My voice was soft. What's your name? She was startled. Me? Diana immediately cut in. Why are you even asking? I didn't look at Diana. I wasn't asking you. The woman looked up, her lips trembling. My name is Nikki. Do you know Paul? She immediately shook her head. No, ma'am. We don't know each other. I froze. They didn't know each other. Nikki bit her lip, and tears started to fall. I work at the makeup salon downstairs. His sister called me and said I just needed to stand here for a few minutes. She said she'd give me $1,000. $1,000. I was speechless. For $1,000, a stranger was hired to take my place as the bride at my own wedding. I turned to Paul. He was ghostly pale. Paul, aren't you disgusted? I had no other choice. No other choice, I laughed. That's an easy thing to say. I was gone for less than 2 hours. You didn't look for me. You didn't ask if I was alive or dead. The first thing you did was find someone else to take my place. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. Paul looked at me, his eyes starting to panic. It's not like that. Then what is it? I was afraid of embarrassing Mom and Dad. Ah, I nodded. Embarrassment. Again. I looked out at the crowd. So many eyes were on us, some filled with pity, some with curiosity, some with contempt. But I no longer felt any hurt. I turned my gaze back to Paul. You know, I used to think the scariest people were the ones who cheat. But I was wrong. The scariest are the ones who cheat and still think they're in the right. Paul stared at me, his lips moving, but no words coming out. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a text message from my bank. I looked down to read it, and my heart suddenly stopped. The balance in my joint account with Paul had just been transferred. $50,000. Gone. I quickly looked up, my gaze slowly moving in Diana's direction. And in that moment, I saw the corner of her lip curl into a very slight smirk. A tiny smile. But it was enough for me to understand everything. I stared at the phone screen, feeling as if all the blood had drained from my body in an instant. The text message from the bank was crystal clear, every number piercing my eyes. The amount. $50,000. I read it again and again. $50,000. That was the money I had saved over 6 years. Those were the nights I worked overtime until 11 p.m. Those were the cold, packed lunches I ate at my desk. Those were the times I saw beautiful shoes but didn't buy them. That was the money for the wedding, for our future. Everything. Becca, beside me, snatched the phone. What's this? I didn't say a word. She looked at the screen for a few seconds and then cursed loudly. That bitch. The whispering guests looked at us again, but in that moment, I couldn't hear anything. My ears were ringing. I was just staring at Diana. She stood there, arms crossed, the corner of her mouth slightly raised. A small smile, but it was enough. More than enough. I slowly looked up at Paul. The joint account. Paul was taken aback. What? Where's the money in the joint account? Paul's face immediately stiffened. Leah, I'm asking you, where is the money? My voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silent hall, everyone heard. Paul swallowed. I was going to tell you. When were you going to tell me? After the wedding? After I signed all the papers? Or after I moved into the condo that's in your sister's name? Paul turned pale. Diana immediately interjected. I turned to her. Where is the money? How should I know? You really don't know? I looked back at my phone. The text clearly stated the transfer was made to a personal account. The name of the account owner. 3 words. Diana Marie Davis. I laughed. Not from pain anymore, but because the situation was so utterly ridiculous. You don't know? I held the phone up in front of her. So this name is just a coincidence? The color drained from Diana's face. She lunged for the phone. Give me that. I held it back. Why? Are you scared? Paul stepped between us. Leah, calm down. You're telling me to calm down? 50,000 of my dollars were just transferred to your sister's account. No, it's not like that. It's temporary. Diana is just holding it. I stood there for a few seconds, then looked at him as if he were a stranger. Temporarily holding it? Leah, listen to me. Temporarily holding what? The wedding money is supposed to be common funds, right? Common funds? Yes, common funds, so that's why it was moved to your sister's account. Common funds, so there was no need to ask my permission. Common funds, so you took it on our wedding day. Paul's face began to flush. Leah, lower your voice. Why should I lower it? Because there are a lot of people here. I nodded again. Embarrassment, right? He went silent. I looked at him for a long time. 3 years, I had loved this man. I had even imagined that if we had a daughter, I would want her to be as kind as he was. I thought that when my parents grew old, Paul would be my rock. I thought I was so lucky. Now, as I looked at him, all I could see was how foolish I had been. Not foolish for loving the wrong person, but foolish for repeatedly lying to myself. The whispers from the crowd grew louder. My God, they really transferred the money. That's awful. It was her money. This family planned this. Cora panicked. Friends, don't believe her. Then she grabbed my hand. Leah, honey, I'll be honest. We're family here. Don't be so calculating. I looked at her hand holding mine. I suddenly remembered the past. The first time I ate at their house, she served me food and smiled. From now on, I'll treat you like my own daughter. I was so touched back then. Now, I just felt a bitter amusement. My own daughter. Does a mother turn her own daughter into an ATM? I slowly pulled my hand away. Cora, if it was Diana who lost $50,000 today, if it was Diana standing here being laughed at, if it was Diana who was tricked into a sham wedding, would it still be this easy for you to ask for forgiveness? Cora was speechless. Diana immediately shouted, Leah, don't go too far. Too far? Isn't it just $50,000? I stopped. The entire hall went silent. It's just $50,000, I repeated, looking at her. Please say that again. Diana lifted her chin. Why? Even if I say it again, once you marry into this family, it becomes common funds anyway. What are you making a big deal about? She added. Besides, Paul has a stable job with the city. He'll have plenty of opportunities to earn it back. Paul turned pale. Diana. But it was too late. The entire hall had heard. I looked at Paul. This time, I clearly saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of me, but fear because of what Diana had said. Because right at that moment, at a table near the stage, a middle-aged man suddenly stood up. He was wearing a white polo shirt and glasses. I recognized him. He was Paul's department head. He looked at Paul for a long time, then slowly asked, Paul, what did you mean by opportunities to earn? Paul's face instantly lost all color. The department head looked at Paul. His gaze wasn't sharp, but it was heavy enough to create immense pressure. I remembered his name was Mr. Reyes. I had seen him a few times at Paul's company events. He was a calm speaker, the type of longtime leader who didn't need to shout to be feared. In that moment, the ballroom was so quiet. Paul stood on the stage, his lips trembling slightly. Sir, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Reyes didn't respond immediately. He just stared at Paul for a few seconds and repeated the question, what were those opportunities to earn? Paul swallowed. That's not what I meant, sir. Diana immediately stepped in. You misunderstood, sir. What I meant was, Paul is still young. He has many ways to earn a living. Mr. Reyes turned to her. And who are you? I'm his sister. He nodded. I was asking him. Diana froze. Paul started to sweat. I just stood there, watching it all unfold. I don't know why, but I felt tired. The anger was gone. The desire to argue was gone. There was only exhaustion. Because I had just realized a laughable truth. From start to finish, I was never important to this family. I was just an object for a job, for status, for marriage, an object to be used for money. And I, like a fool, thought I was loved. Mr. Reyes spoke again. Paul. Sir? I'm going to ask you one last time. Why is another person's money in your sister's account? Paul paled. Sir, it's true. I don't want to hear any excuses. His colleagues at the tables below started looking at each other. Some leaned in to whisper. Some took out their phones. I saw Paul clench his fists. He suddenly looked at me. Leah, I know I was wrong. I looked at him. But you have to understand me. I laughed softly. Understand what? My family. It's always been like this. For all the big decisions, Diana gets the final say. Even my mom listens to her. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't go against my family either. I looked at him for a long time. 3 years together, and I thought I knew him. I was wrong. A man almost 30 years old, about to get married and start his own family, could still use I can't go against my family as an excuse for deceit. I asked softly, Paul, what if I hadn't found out today? What if I never knew? And after the wedding, I moved into that condo, continued paying the mortgage, kept putting my salary into our joint account? What then? Paul stared at me, his eyes red, but he didn't answer. Because we both knew the answer. I would have become the person paying off the debt for a house in Diana's name. I would have continued to be understanding, obedient, and kind, until the day I had nothing left to give. Becca, who was standing beside me, suddenly stepped forward. She looked straight at Paul. I have a question for you. Paul looked up. Did you ever love Leah? The whole room fell silent. I looked at him too. I don't know why, but I also wanted to know. Paul looked at me for a long time, so long that I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, he lowered his head. Yes. I laughed. And suddenly, tears started streaming down my face. Not because I was touched, but because of the sadness. Because a person can love another, but also be selfish, also be calculating, also be a liar. Love and pain, sometimes, are not opposites. Just then, Paul's phone rang. He looked at the screen and turned pale. I accidentally saw the two words written there. Dad calling. Paul immediately answered, Dad. I don't know what was said on the other end, but Paul's face changed from white to green. What? Why? That's impossible. I frowned. Diana moved closer. What happened? Paul slowly lowered the phone, his lips trembling. What did Dad say? He said, the bank called. And the condo. It's been frozen. The whole ballroom was stunned. Diana practically screamed. What? Why is it frozen? Paul looked at her. Dad said, It seems the property was already used as collateral a while ago. I stood straight up. Even Becca beside me was stunned. Diana, on the other hand, looked like she was going crazy. Impossible! How could it be used as collateral? I have the deed. Paul looked at her, his expression suddenly changing. Diana, what did you just say? Diana froze, her face drained of all blood. And I, for the first time since that morning, felt a true chill run through my entire being, because I suddenly realized there was a much bigger problem than just being cheated. And it seemed even Paul had no idea. I stood on the stage, watching Diana's bloodless face, and a strange realization dawned on me. Since I had walked into that ballroom, this was the first time I had seen her genuinely panic. Before, even when I had exposed the condo, the money, or the fake bride, she had remained calm, arrogant, as if everything was under her control. But this was different, completely different. Diana's eyes were wide, her lips trembling. Impossible. It can't be. Dad must be mistaken. Paul stared at his sister. Diana, what did you mean you have the deed? How long have you had it? Diana immediately looked away. Nothing. You heard wrong. Don't ask so many questions. Paul froze. I could clearly see the shift in his eyes. In our 3 years together, I knew Paul was weak, always giving in to his family, always listening to his sister. But that didn't mean he was stupid. There are things you don't question on an ordinary day. But when the truth starts to unravel, you can't help but connect the dots. And when you do, it's terrifying. Paul glared at Diana. How long have you had the deed? Answer me. Diana stammered. Mom told me to keep it. Paul immediately turned to his mother. Cora was shocked. Me? I didn't tell you to hide anything. Your sister said she would take care of it, so I let her. I stood to the side watching the scene and I suddenly laughed. It was truly hilarious. A moment ago, all the blame was on me. I was the one who was calculating, selfish, and unable to get along. Now that there was a real problem, they were all pointing fingers at each other. No one was taking responsibility, no one was at fault. I was just the fool. Mr. Reyes stood up from his table. Paul, sir? Come down here. His voice wasn't loud, but Paul descended from the stage like it was a reflex. They stood a few feet away. I couldn't hear what they were discussing, but Paul's face grew uglier, his forehead beaded with sweat. A moment later, he looked up at me, a strange expression on his face, as if he was truly seeing me for the first time. He quickly ran back up to the stage. Leah. I looked at him for a second and handed him my phone. Paul stared at the screen and turned even paler. That account. It's Diana's account, I said softly. He immediately looked at his sister, who flinched. The money from the joint account. You transferred it? Tell me the truth. Was it you? No. Then who else knows the password? Diana bit her lip and didn't answer. Paul stared at her, and I saw his hand begin to shake. He suddenly let out a small bitter laugh. Diana, from the very beginning, you were using me too, weren't you? The whole ballroom was stunned. Diana's eyes widened. What are you talking about? The condo, the money, the deed, it's all in your name. You said you were just holding it. You said it was for my own good. You said you were afraid I'd be taken advantage of. But the truth is, Paul stared at her, his eyes red. You were taking my money. You were taking Leah's money too, weren't you? Diana stepped back. Are you crazy? I'm your sister. Why would I do that? Steal your house? Your money? Cora rushed up. Paul, what are you saying? That's your sister. Calm down. But it was as if Paul couldn't hear anything. He had held it in for 3 years, listened, and bowed his head. And some people, the longer they hold it in, the more terrifying they are when they finally explode. Just then, Diana's phone rang, its ringtone loud in the silent hall. She looked at the screen, her face bloodless. I accidentally saw the caller ID. Tony. She quickly silenced the call, but it was too late. Paul saw it. Who's Tony? It's none of your business. He's the one you owe money to, isn't he? You owe a loan shark, don't you? A gasp went through the crowd. I froze, feeling like I'd been hit over the head. A loan shark. Paul stared at his sister, his voice trembling. You used the condo's deed as collateral to pay off your debts, didn't you? Diana didn't answer, but her deathly pale face said everything. She didn't have to speak. Her eyes and her expression were enough. I watched her standing in the middle of the stage, her lips white, her grip on her handbag so tight, her knuckles were white. The woman who had been so smug, as if she held the world in her hands, was now completely exposed. The whispers in the hall erupted. A loan shark? Oh my God, really? So she took the other girl's money to pay off her debts. The murmurs spread like a wave. People were questioning each other, taking out phones, staring at Paul's family in disbelief. Cora was nearly hysterical. Paul, what are you saying? How could your sister owe a loan shark? Paul looked at his mother, his eyes red. Really, Mom? You didn't know? I didn't know. I knew nothing. But even I could see she was lying, her panic giving her away. Paul laughed, a strange, bitter laugh. You didn't know, so you let Diana keep the deed. You didn't know, so you let her transfer Leah's money to her account. You didn't know, so you pushed me to get married. All for me, right? All for my own good? Cora shrank back. For you. Yes, for you. I stood there, my throat tight. I thought I was the biggest victim here, but I don't know why, looking at Paul. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not pity, not exactly pain, but sadness. It was sad that this man had lived for nearly 30 years, but never had a life of his own. It was always, Mom said, Diana said, the family said. He never once made a decision for himself. But then I laughed at myself. Sad, yes, but that didn't absolve him of his guilt. Because no matter what, he still chose to deceive me. Diana's phone rang again. This time, not just one call, but two in quick succession. She looked at the screen and quickly silenced it. Paul blocked her. Let me see. It has nothing to do with you. Give it to me! Diana clutched her handbag tightly, but Paul was done holding back. He snatched the phone from her hand. Paul, give it back! The two siblings scuffled on stage. Suddenly, there was a loud thud. Diana's handbag fell, its contents spilling everywhere: lipstick, a wallet, keys, a pile of papers, and a small black notebook. I don't know why, but when Diana saw the notebook, she turned deathly pale. She lunged for it. Don't touch that. But it was too late. The papers had scattered at my feet. Unconsciously, I bent down and picked them up. I froze. They were loan agreements. So many of them. The borrower's name was always Diana Davis. One for $5,000, one for $10,000, one for $20,000. The dates went back almost 2 years. I unfolded another one, and my hands went cold. Under the collateral section, it was clearly written, Condominium Unit at East Austin Urban Development, Tower 12. My condo. The condo I paid for. I was stunned. Paul snatched the papers from me. As he read them, his face changed colors. Diana, are you insane? The total here is almost $100,000. The ballroom exploded with gasps. $100,000? My God, how did she get into that much debt? Diana started sobbing. I didn't mean to. I really didn't mean to. I just wanted to win it back. Paul looked at her as if she were a stranger. Win what back? Diana collapsed onto the floor, her face streaked with tears. I invested in stocks. I lost. Then I borrowed more to try and make it back, but I lost again. I didn't want the family to know. I just wanted to earn it all back. I never expected it to get like this. I just stood there. All the pieces were finally clicking into place. Why the condo had to be in her name. Why the deed had to be hidden. Why my money had to be transferred. Why the wedding had to be pushed through. Because they needed money. Desperately. And I was the chosen solution. Just then, from the ballroom entrance, a loud voice shouted, Where's Diana Davis? Which one of you is she? Get out here. The whole ballroom turned. 3 men in black shirts were standing at the door, their expressions cold. And when she saw them, Diana almost collapsed completely. The 3 men at the door didn't say another word. They just stood there, but the way they scanned the room sent a chill through the air. The tallest one looked to be in his 40s, with short hair, a black polo shirt, and a tattoo that ran up his arm. His 2 companions were also dressed in black, their faces expressionless. The previous whispers died down completely. Diana, sitting on the floor, was as white as a sheet. For the first time since I met her, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not the panic of being embarrassed, but true, bone-deep fear, her lips trembling. The man in front scanned the crowd and spoke again. "Where's Diana Davis?" No one answered. He frowned. "Don't make me ask a second time." Diana scrambled to her feet, her voice trembling so much it was barely audible. "Tony." "I'm here." The man smiled when he saw her, but it was not a reassuring smile. It was chilling. "There you are. You're a hard woman to find, you know that? Changed your number, moved, deactivated your social media. Very clever." Diana backed away. "Tony, please listen to me. I'm getting the money, I swear. Just a few more days." The man chuckled. "A few more days? You've been telling me that for 4 months. Last time you said you were selling some land. Before that, you said a relative was sending money. What is it now?" He looked around the ballroom, at the stage, at the wedding decorations, and laughed. "Ah, I see. You found a new victim." Paul turned pale. "What are you talking about?" The man turned to Paul. "Are you the brother? Do you know how much your sister owes? With interest and principal, it's almost $150,000. The ballroom erupted. $150,000? My God, how did that happen? I just stood there. I didn't know how to describe what I was feeling. It was like watching an impossibly dramatic movie. Just hours ago, I was getting my makeup done for my wedding. Now, I was standing in the middle of a ballroom, watching the family that was supposed to be mine fall apart. Paul turned to Diana. $150,000? You said it was 100. Diana sobbed. "I can't remember anymore." "Listen to me. I just wanted to make it right. I'll pay it back. I promise, I'll pay it back." Paul stared at her. I had never seen that look in his eyes before. There was no more weakness, no more submission. It was filled with utter disillusionment. He asked quietly, "When did you take the condo's deed? When did you take Leah's money? Answer me." His shout startled everyone. Diana whimpered. "Yesterday." I froze. Yesterday. Yesterday, I was happily calling my mom to ask what kind of cake to buy. Yesterday, I was laughing with Paul on the phone. Yesterday, I was thinking that in just a few more hours, I would be wearing my wedding gown. But somewhere else, my money was being drained, my future was being plotted, and I was being prepared to be a pack mule for someone else's debt. I suddenly started laughing, a laugh I couldn't stop. Everyone stared at me. Becca held my hand. "Leah," I looked at Paul. "You know, a minute ago, I thought maybe you were a victim in this too. I thought, poor you, but now I realize I'm the real fool." Paul's eyes reddened. "Leah, don't say my name. Whether you knew or not, whether you intended it or not, you were the one who pulled me into this hole." He hung his head, unable to say a word. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was my dad. I stared at the screen for a few seconds and answered. "Dad." A worried voice came through. "Leah, honey, where are you?" "I'm at the hotel. Your mom and I are on our way up. We're in the lobby now." I froze. My hands went cold. My parents had arrived, and they had no idea what their daughter had just been through. I held the phone, standing still for a few seconds, a cold tightness gripping my throat. Since that morning, I had been deceived, betrayed, robbed, and made a fool of at my own wedding. I thought I was calm. But when I heard my dad's voice, all the emotions I had been suppressing suddenly crumbled. My dad asked again, "Leah, can you hear me? Why does it sound so chaotic there? We're hearing some ugly talk in the lobby. Where's Paul?" I clutched the phone, not knowing how to answer. 3 years ago, when I brought Paul home, my dad pulled me aside and asked, "Are you sure about him, honey? He seems nice, but a little weak." I had laughed then. "He's very kind, Dad. That's what's important. Kind men know how to love their wives." My dad looked at me for a long time and sighed. "As long as you're happy, that's what matters." Growing up, my dad never forbade me from doing anything. Whatever major I wanted, he let me. I wanted to work in the city, he allowed it. I wanted to marry Paul, he agreed. He had only one condition. "Honey, no matter what happens, don't let anyone push you around." I had laughed then. "Who would dare push your daughter around, Dad?" Now, thinking back, my vision blurred. Because I hadn't just been pushed around, I had walked into the trap myself. "Leah, why aren't you answering?" My dad's voice brought me back to reality. I bit my lip. "Dad, I'm on the second floor. Please come up." After I said that, I heard my mom's voice on the line. Honey, are you okay? I froze. One simple question. A question so simple, yet since that morning, it was the first time anyone had asked me that. Not about the wedding, not about the guests, not about embarrassment. Just about whether I was okay. I looked away, and finally, the tears poured out. I'm okay, Mom. My mom was silent for a few seconds. Then she said softly, Honey, you were never a good liar. I didn't answer. I just heard my mom sigh. We'll be right there. The call ended. I stood there, stunned. Becca put a hand on my shoulder. Leah, you okay? I nodded, but I knew I wasn't. No one who loses a fiancé, their trust, almost their life savings, and nearly falls into a debt trap would be okay. Across the stage, the three men in black were still standing, looking at Diana. Tony checked his watch. So, what's the plan? You paying today, or do we come pick you up at your house? Diana sobbed. Tony, please just give me a few more days. I'm begging you. I'm about to get the money. I swear I'm so close. The man smirked. Money from where? The wedding? Diana froze. Paul, standing beside her, looked at his sister as if she were a stranger. Just then, the ballroom doors opened again. I turned. Standing there were my dad and my mom. My dad was in a white polo shirt, slightly wrinkled from the long drive. My mom was wearing the blue dress I bought her last Christmas. They stood there, looking at me, at the ballroom, at the stage, and at the wedding gown worn by a woman who was not their daughter. My mom stopped in her tracks. My dad froze. The entire ballroom fell silent. I looked at my dad. In my entire life, I had never seen his eyes so red. He didn't ask a question. He didn't speak. He just walked toward the stage, slowly, and stood in front of me. He gently stroked my hair. They treated you badly, didn't they, honey? I bit my lip hard, trembling, and suddenly threw my arms around him. All the self-control I had forced upon myself since that morning crumbled. I cried. I cried like a child, so hard I couldn't speak. And in that moment, a voice echoed behind me, low and broken. Sir, I'm so sorry. Paul's voice was hoarse and quiet, but in the silent ballroom, everyone heard him. I'm so sorry, sir. I truly am. I never wanted any of this to happen. I was still hugging my dad, my tears not yet dry. The familiar scent of his old polo shirt reminded me of my childhood. Whenever I was bullied at school, I would run home and hug him, just like this. Back then, I thought my dad was the strongest person in the world. As long as he was there, I had nothing to fear. It's strange how, no matter how old you get, when you're hurt, all you want is to be a child again. My dad gently patted my back and moved me behind him. He looked at Paul. Not with anger, not with shouting, he just looked. But that look made Paul bow his head even lower. I'm sorry, sir. I really am. My dad was silent for a few seconds, then asked, Then who is the reason my daughter has been standing here crying? Paul was speechless. I'm not asking if you meant for it to happen or not, my dad said, his voice steady. I have only one question. If my daughter hadn't found out about the condo, if she hadn't found out her money was gone, if she hadn't discovered all of this, how long were you planning to keep it from her? The entire ballroom was silent. Paul opened his mouth but then just hung his head again, unable to say a word, because everyone knew the answer. My mom came to my side and took my hand. It was cold. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She just stroked my hair and said softly, Let's go home, honey. 3 words. When I heard them, my throat tightened. Let's go home. Not don't cry, not just endure it. Not think of what others will say. Just, let's go home. Perhaps in the whole world only parents are like this. When their child is hurting, they don't prioritize right or wrong. They just want to bring their child home. I looked at Diana, collapsed on the floor, her hair a mess, her eyes swollen. The 3 men in black stood beside her, waiting. I didn't feel any joy, not really. Maybe because I was just too tired. All I felt was a sense of pity. Pity for a family that, because of greed, had torn itself apart. And finally, I looked at Paul. He stood there, his suit still perfectly pressed, his tie still neat. Only his eyes were red. Leah, I raised my hand to stop him. Don't say anything else. There was a time I wanted to marry you with all my heart. I imagined living my whole life with you, having children, taking care of our parents. I thought that house would be ours. But Paul, I looked him straight in the eye. I can handle poverty. I can face challenges. I can start over with you. But I cannot live with a man who, every time there's a problem, chooses to be silent, to deceive, and to let others make his life decisions for him. A man who chooses to sacrifice me. Tears streamed down Paul's face. For the first time since that morning, I saw him cry. But my heart felt nothing. I took my parents' hands and walked down from the stage, with Becca by my side. As we passed the entrance, I happened to see our engagement photo on a display. In the picture, I was smiling happily. Paul was smiling happily too. I looked at it for a few seconds, then slowly slipped the ring off my finger and placed it on the reception table. Some things are painful when you lose them, but some things, when lost, are a great blessing. A month later, I got my money back. The bank had frozen the transaction. The condo was settled by the court, and Diana was held accountable for her debts. I heard Paul transferred to a different city. A year passed. I went home for my birthday. My mom brought out a cake. My dad smiled and asked, "Is my daughter okay now?" I looked at the lights in our backyard and smiled. This time, the smile was real. Because I finally understood. In this world, marrying the wrong person isn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing is knowing it's wrong, but blindly continuing anyway. I later heard news about Paul. He changed jobs, lived a quiet life, and never had another girlfriend. Diana had to sell their family home to pay off her debts. Cora called my mom several times, crying, wanting to apologize to me, but I refused. Not because I was still angry, but because some things, even after an apology, can never be put back together. Like a shattered glass, even if you glue it, the cracks will always be there. And I no longer wanted to live my life next to a crack. Life is short. Too short to spend it with people who don't choose you. Too short to exchange your entire life for a few years of misguided love. A wedding is not the destination. Peace of mind is. I learned to love again, but this time, with my eyes wide open. And I learned that the safest place in the world isn't in someone's arms, but in the home your parents built, where a light is always left on, waiting for you to return.